Okay, so in June of 2025, we returned to the war-torn world of Armageddon. The conflict known as the Fourth War of Armageddon was where Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, attempted to take over the world again. If you want to know the events of that war, check out my Need to Know Fourth War of Armageddon video. However, this has led to an argument over this book. Is this the Fourth War, or now the Fifth War of Armageddon? Well, reading it out, it's a continuation of the Fourth War. So calm down, everyone! Now, if you watched my other videos about Armageddon, you shouldn't need an introduction. And if you haven't, what are you doing here? Go watch my previous videos to get context! Back on topic, this campaign is a continuation of the Fourth War, with the Imperial Guard launching a campaign to push the orks off Armageddon once and for all, and how that goes to shit really fast. As two characters return to the world, the infamous Ghazghkull and someone who I am never gonna live down, Commissar Sabotage Yarrick. For those unaware, by the start of 9th edition, Yarrick was taken out of the Imperial Guard Codex, and GW later confirmed that a body was sent to Terra, leading many, including myself, to assume that he was dead, which fit with the new generation of Guard commanders coming in to replace the old Guard. Then we get the new Armageddon trailer and see that Yarrick is alive and well. It did in my first Armageddon video something fierce, and I'll never hear the fucking end of it, will I? Amount of people screaming about a character still being dead. Sorry lads, Yarrick ain't coming back, and I'm personally fine with him being dead.
Should we judge him?
Boy. Yes.
But what is going on with Armageddon? Why did Ghazghkull come back? Where was Yarrick, and why did it take him so long to come back? Well, join me for the final event of 10th edition as we return to Armageddon and catch up after the events of the Coordinate Invasion. Note, there will be spoilers ahead, so ye have been warned. Our story begins supposedly a year after the events of Angron's second invasion of Armageddon. The Grey Knights have long since left after the destruction of Red Angel's Gate in the Ash Wastes, and the Space Wolves and Black Templars have also supposedly withdrawn a majority of their forces. However, the forces of Armageddon have been reinforced with more regiments of Cadians and Kriegers from other war zones that were recently finished. With these new reinforcements came Mechanicus forces, Sisters of Battle Covens, and a new Imperial Guard officer by the name of Commissar Graves and Inquisitor Croyle of the Ordo Xenos. Now, Commissar Graves, Inquisitor Croyle, and the Sisters of Battle's new Dogmata Superior, Intransia Frey, make a case to Armageddon's planetary governor and council that they should renew the Fourth War. This is because, in Graves' own words, that they have tolerated the Xenos and heretics on the planet for too long, and that the defenders haven't done enough to expunge the taint from their world. If your jaw dropped from just how stupid that sounded, great! You now understand how the Imperium works when Gilman isn't looking over their shoulder, telling them to calm the fuck down. Now, everyone in this room knows Graves' dreaded reputation. Since her arrival on Armageddon, she counts more kills from the Officer Corps of Armageddon than actual enemies. So talking back to her wasn't a great idea, especially as an Inquisitor and Dogmata Superior are backing her up. Though they were already planning to renew the war once the Season of Fire was over, so this was a bit of a moot point, but the Council agreed to their demands. The new offensive would begin in earnest and would be led by Imperial General Locke of the Steel Legion, a veteran of the Third War of Armageddon. Locke was given all that was available to carry out this operation, which was basically to kill things and retake territory until the three loudest voices in the peanut gallery shut it. Planning from there, Locke had two decisions: either retake Hive Tempestor from the orks, or remove them from the equatorial jungle that the orks had been hiding in since the Second War. Now, the orks' numbers have been thinned over the years. The Season of Fire is nothing but a bunch of fire tornadoes tearing through Armageddon's plains and jungles, and the Coordinate Invasion didn't help their numbers. However, attacking a well-entrenched enemy with the forces he had wasn't going to cut it, especially if the orks from the jungle came out to help, because there was a good scrap to get mixed up in. So, Locke chose the smarter option and wanted to burn the orks out of the jungle. Now, for those that don't know, orks reproduce through fungal spores. Merely breathing and farting is enough to spread them around. So anywhere the orcs set up shop means that you're going to have an orc problem for the rest of your life. And the orcs have been here since M41-941, meaning that they've had more than enough time to really get their fungal roots all over the jungle. Locke, however, knew the best way to deal with it. Burn the jungle away piecemeal. Locke's plan was simple. Each part of the equatorial jungle would be sectioned up into quadrants. Then he would move his regiments into said quadrants, covering each other as they burned the jungle away, with the assistance of the Sisters of Battle and Mechanicus forces taking their own quadrants. The campaign would be slow, but it was thorough and would leave the orcs with only two options: sit and burn to death, or run headlong into well-trained gun lines of Cadians and Kriegers defending the Purge regiments. And when the plan began, it was perfect. The Imperials saw huge successes all across the board as they burned away orc fortresses and camps that had been entrenched in the jungles for decades, with the orcs uselessly bouncing off Armageddon Hellhound units and entrenched guard positions, or were cut down by disciplined Sisters of Battle squads led by Dogmata Frey and bombing campaigns from the Mechanicus. All General Locke had to do now was grab a cup of recaf, put his feet up, and wait for the jungle to be ash and cinders. Wait. No. This can't be it. This is boring as shit! How dare there be an easy fight! Give me the fucking button! Yeah, remember that this is 40k. Any competent plan or character has to be met with a massive setback. In this case, the plan was absolutely fisted out of existence by the return of the orc warlord, Ghazghkull. Now, you're probably wondering, why the hell did Ghazi come back after he got bored of the Third War and left? Well, Ghazi has been busy since the Third War, trying to build up the biggest war the galaxy has ever seen. And over the decade he's been gone, he has truly built up such a huge war that he no longer invades a system at a time, but rolls over multiple star systems in an avalanche of violence and destruction. The problem, once his horde got big enough, was, well, controlling it, along with getting tired of the runaround of trying to find and add more orcs to his banner. Ghazghkull came to a realization. Armageddon was always fun. It always attracted more and more orcs and other combatants to it when he invaded, and now that his Wa had become twice the size of his previous invasion, it would not only embroil the planet of Armageddon, but the system itself and its neighbors. A huge war zone that not only would bring in more orcs to his banner, but also other factions looking for a scrap, or can't get out of the way in time. The plan was set, and Ghazi had his target. Ghazghkull would begin the operation by having a massive teleporter built in space, meant to slingshot his Wa into the Armageddon system, with war boss Nezdrake assisting in this. Ghazi's teleporter would shotgun his Wa all over the sector, but would drop Ghazghull's capital ship, Killrekka, right in front of Armageddon's orbital defenses, and before they could even warm up their guns, Killrekka destroyed them with ease, allowing the orcs to begin landing in the millions upon Armageddon's surface, not led by Ghazi, but by speed boss Wazdaka Gutsmek, a returning orc character from 2nd edition. Wazdaka was given specific instructions to encircle the Imperial Hive of Volcanis and cut off any attempt for the Imperials to call for help. With the orcs landing all over the plains of Aetherand, they quickly began to overwhelm the Imperial defenses, with General Locke and Dogmata Frey's forces being caught totally off guard by the sudden appearance of orc reinforcements with no warning. The worst part was that with where the orcs were landing, and the operation that Locke committed to, the jungle acted as a massive pace breaker for the orcs, whose speed was were slowed down by the terrain. But now that the jungle had been burned away, it was open season on the Imperials by Wazdaka's Speed Freak Wa. Locke and Frey, seeing their forces being overwhelmed, ordered a general retreat back to Hive Volcanis, their armor spearhead forcing a breakout from the jungle and making a beeline for the Hive. However, the Imperial convoy was made up of slow-moving tanks and APCs. Their breakout was quickly stopped by Wazdaka, who had completely encircled the Imperial forces and quickly began to choke them with hit-and-run attacks, along with a tightening noose of orks pressing in on all sides. But before Locke and Frey could see their end, a grayish-blue gunship smashed an orc offensive and landed in the center of the thickest fighting. Once the ramp slammed down, 3 Space Wolf champions jumped out, hacking away at orcs with their blades and bolters. But that didn't make everyone pause. It was who stepped off the gunship next that got both Imperial and Orc to stop and look. A ghost from Armageddon's past walked off the ramp of the Space Wolf gunship, and everyone from Locke to even Wazdaka couldn't believe what they were seeing. Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, hero of Hades' Hive and Ghazghkull's arch-rival, was alive, and he had returned. Now, if you watched my previous videos or know who Yarrick is, you're probably asking, where the fuck has he been? Well, after the Third War of Armageddon, Yarrick along with the Black Templars chased after Ghazi. Originally, Ghazi just teleported his capital ship out of the fleet battle he got stuck in, but this was later retconned and expanded upon to be that Ghazi was building a prototype of the teleporter we saw earlier to get away from the pursuing fleet. With the Space Wolves joining in later, Yarrick's fleet of Retribution would chase Ghazi's fleet to the world of Icaria, where the rivals would have an epic clash on top of the massive device. It went about as well as you think. Ghazi shit-stopped Yarrick and left him for dead, as the teleporter activated. With Imperial forces retreating and leaving the broken Yarrick for dead, a Space Wolf Priest calmly walked through the retreating forces, grabbed Yarrick's broken body, and brought him back to the Space Wolf ship, Ice Troll, for medical help. This explains where Yarrick has been since the start of 9th edition. He was literally a broken mess recovering aboard a Space Wolf ship who got lost after the Great Rift split the galaxy in half, with them eventually getting their bearings and trying to make their way to Armageddon again. However, due to the Orc teleporter shenanigans, the resulting Wa energy had disrupted communications and navigation, making it nearly impossible for any fleet or ship to find the world. Yarrick, now fully recovered, made an argument that if he could get a special Astronomicon beacon to Armageddon, it would help reinforcing fleets reach Armageddon. With the Wolf Priest's blessing, Yarrick departed with a Space Wolf escort, which leads us back to the present. Yarrick's presence was a huge morale boost for the Imperials, as in the confusion of his return, he led the Imperials to form another breakout, which succeeded this time as the orcs were either mortified at the return of Old Bad Eye, or were excited that such a legend returned they forgot where they were. Yarrick would lead the Imperial forces back to Hive Volcanis, and once inside, the Lord Commissar was welcomed back with open arms, and he filled the Armageddon Council on the new plan. Using a special device, it would give a priority signal through all the noise within the Armageddon system for the Imperial forces to find them. All he needed was Volcanis' astropathic choir, which he left for with the planetary governor and his retinue of bodyguards. However, after he left, Commissar Graves was so angry about the retreat, she executed General Locke before he could even defend himself. Wow! Asshole! Things would get worse, however. When Yarrick and the governor entered the astropathic choir, the room was a mess of bodies, and the head astropath was dead, throat slit and body bobbing in the pool of water they used for communication, with a bloody dagger emblem being left on the wall as a calling card for who was responsible. War boss Snickrot of the Blood Axe clan had managed to sneak his way into Volcanis, and he killed the astropathic choir to stop Yarrick from calling for help. Yarrick, knowing Ghazghkull probably predicted this and ordered Snickrot to action, quickly left the chamber, knowing the only other hives that had astropathic choirs were hives Hellreach, Infernus, and Deathmire. With the 2 former hives being out of his reach, he had to settle for Deathmire. Yarrick returned to the council chamber and began strategizing with Graves, the new Krieg Marshal put in charge, and the other Imperial commanders. The plan was to now get Yarrick to Deathmire by staging a breakout of the encircling orcs. This would be led by Graves and the Krieg Marshal, who would form a force to distract the orcs from Yarrick's convoy long enough to let them break out, with Yarrick's forces being given the best of the force's tank aces, though their infantry would be made up of a mix of veterans and fresh conscripts for the PDF. It was a bold and suicidal plan, but that's what Yarrick was best at. The plan began with Graves' forces launching an assault on Wazdaka's Speedwa, smashing into his line with an armored force, while Yarrick and his forces quickly snuck out the back with an escort of Imperial knights that were still there from the Third War of Armageddon. With Wazdaka realizing the feint the Imperials just pulled off, he turned his personal Wa around and chased after Yarrick, knowing old Baelor was up to something. The race for Hive Deathmire would be brutal and bloody. Yarrick's forces got hit from all sides. There was never a moment of peace for them, getting caught by orc ambushes, plowing through entrenched positions, and barely escaping several encirclements. It cost Yarrick most of his entourage, and he, along with Inquisitor Croyle, who accompanied the convoy, were wounded. But after heavy fighting and the sacrifice of all but 15 of their bodyguards, Yarrick and Croyle reached Hive Deathmire and its astropathic choir, with Yarrick grimly handing over the special device to the lead astropath and telling them the message he never thought he would have to give in his lifetime. The astropathic choir of Deathmire sent out the message, being seen by every nearby force from the Cadian Gate all the way to Ultramar. Ghazghkull had returned, and Armageddon itself had fallen. Its defenders were unable to contain the orc threat, and now were holed up in barely standing hives. However, unknown to Yarrick and his surviving allies, reinforcements were already on the way, from Marneus Calgar retasking his force from the Fourth Tyrannic War to join an armada heading for Armageddon, but also a Blood Angel strike force who were already on the way to uphold a vow from their chapter to protect the world. Armageddon may have fallen, but the war is far from over. The Return of Yarrik is the final campaign book released for 40k's 10th edition, as 11th edition is just around the corner as of this video's scripting. The idea of this book is simple: get Yarrick back to Armageddon and set up for the 11th edition starter box, which is why Yarrick was hell-bent on getting that special device to Deathmire by the end of the book. It was also meant to reintroduce Wazdaka Gutsmech, who hadn't been a playable orc character since 4th edition, along with giving the Imperial Guard a new set of tanks and transports to flesh out their army a bit more. The books for Return of Yarrik are also meant to refamiliarize oneself with the Wars of Armageddon and who the main players are, reintroducing us to Yarrick and Ghazghkull, while also giving character profiles for Commissar Graves, Inquisitor Croyle, Dogmata Frey, and Wazdaka, with the accompanying books being for Crusade games that want a heavier focus on vehicles and tank warfare, which will still be usable in 10th edition, as GW reassured fans of the game mode who were scared we were going to lose Crusade as a game mode in 11th edition. So don't stress it. Everything from 4th Tyrannic War all the way to Yarrick's return can still be used for 11th edition Crusade games. Although, I find it kind of boring we are returning to Armageddon for the 5th goddamn time, I gotta say it's interesting to see that the world has finally fallen. It's no longer a matter of defending it from the orcs, but holding out and waiting for reinforcements to come save them, then help retake the world and systems back from the orcs. Hell, Ghazi doesn't even set foot on the planet. He is waiting for the shit show he created to get out of hand, as he wants this to be the biggest party the galaxy has ever seen. Which, God, I love this giant idiot! But that's it for the 10th edition of Warhammer 40k. An edition that was fun and super creative, but was clearly a framework that GW wanted to experiment with, work out the problems with the framework, and improve upon them for 11th edition, which we will get in summer of 2026. Will it be good? Will it be bad? We'll have to see. I will be doing a video for 11th edition when it comes out, but if you want to see it early, join the Patreon. You'll also get to see Need to Know Deathwatch early and an exclusive series. Also, I stream weekdays, so if you want to join me for Pate nights or game nights, go give my Twitch a follow. Your support, whether through Patreon or subscribing here and sharing my videos around, help more than you think. But until then, everyone, I'll see you all next time.